All right, guys, welcome back to the One for the Road podcast. Today, I'm going to be covering an AI model that has been pulled from the general public. And when I say pulled, I mean they didn't, schedule a later date for it to be released. As of now, they have decided that this AI model is too powerful for the general public. So let's get into why it might be. So, Mythos Preview is an extremely powerful model. It's not just a regular AI model. Some would call it a monster. It's hit some really big numbers. It's really flexing its stats as of now. So on the SWE bench, it got a 93.9%. On the USAMO, it got a 97.6%. On CyberGem, it got an 83.1%. This is the first thing finding zero-day vulnerabilities like it was nothing. Every major OS, every major browser with no human help. It's not a tool, it's a weapon. Well, depending on who uses it, anyway. So let's get into a little bit of the details of why they pulled it. They're considering it really dangerous. Anthropic basically said, yeah, the public just can't handle this. So let's break down the crazy examples. A 27-year-old open BSD bug was detected by Mythos. A 16-year-old FFmpeg bug was detected, and a Linux kernel exploit chain was detected by Mythos. Now, keep in mind, these organizations hire top-notch cybersecurity professionals to review all of their information every year. It's obviously very important to them. It's not something that they would take lightly, so they hire the best. And this model has been able to pick up vulnerabilities that these guys have missed for, like I said, with OpenBSD, 27 years, and then for FFmpeg, 16 years. So basically what that says is for years and years, human beings have not been able to pick up these vulnerabilities. And this AI model has. So the biggest fear is, obviously, if the wrong person, I guess you could call them hackers, get their hands on this model, that they could potentially cause catastrophic damage to these companies and overall to the world, because these are some of the biggest organizations in the world. These guys that have been reviewing these organizations, these are top-notch elite guys, and Mythos found it like it was nothing. I mean, it didn't take half the time that it would take a human to review these organizations, and it did it way more accurate. So that's the big fear, guys. An AI model that is obviously outdoing humans on a grand scale, that can pick up vulnerabilities within these organizations. If even terrorists got their hands on this, they could potentially control the World Wide Web. They could control the finance industry, the defense industry. Everything could be vulnerable if the wrong people got their hands on this. But there is something being put into place, hopefully to prevent this, and that is Project Glasswing. So instead of releasing it, they basically created a private club within Project Glasswing. And only the big dogs, of course, are getting access. You've got guys like, or companies, I guess I should say, like Microsoft, NVIDIA, Amazon, Google, Apple, Cisco, CrowdStrike, JP Morgan, the Linux Foundation, the Palo Alto Networks, and many more. Those are just some of the ones that I came across when I was doing my research here. So this is the tech equivalent of giving the Avengers early access to a new weapon. It's a pretty big deal. Of course, the cybersecurity network, I guess you could say, of course, was up in roars when this came to be. They're of course wondering, well, if this AI model can do my job better than I can, what will these companies be needed for? And I think that's a lot of people's worries as of now. With AI, everybody's worried it's going to take their job, and what jobs will be left once AI really gets integrated. I mean, on that note, guys, I really think that AI is going to be integrated in a big way. I've personally been using it for work, not for anything, not anything major level, so to say, but just in my day-to-day at work, it has been phenomenal to use. So I do believe that AI will leave a huge footprint, I guess you could say, across every industry, not just the tech industry. It'll get into construction. It'll get into finance. It can make everything more efficient in every industry. Now, with that being said, I would not be worried. The mentality that I would have, and that I do have, is I would be wanting to learn this stuff as fast as possible. And if you're one of those unfortunate people who maybe it does replace your job, well, I would be learning how to integrate it myself. I need to gain the skills on using AI. So then obviously you could go find a job, a lot easier if you were to lose your job. But I don't think we're quite to that point to where, people are just going to be getting laid off left and right. There have been some layoffs. I'm sure some of you may have seen in the mainstream news. There are companies that are laying off, but at the same time, it still hasn't gotten to that point to where everybody should be losing sleep at night over AI. But it is coming, and I would recommend anybody to try to utilize it as much as possible. I mean, if you would have told me just in the past 6 months before I started using it, if you would have told me that I was going to be using AI at work, I would have told you were crazy. I'm definitely not a tech guy. Been in the construction industry all my life, and if you would have told me that I would be, dabbling into tech, I would have told you that you were crazy. But it's for the most part, the open AI models that are out there, they're very easy to use. They're dummy proof, so to say, and I would really encourage anybody to try to use it. I'm getting off track here a little bit, so we'll get back to Project Glasswing, what exactly it's doing. So just to break it down in simple terms, they're scanning for vulnerability, they're pen testing, hardening infrastructure. Now, I found this pretty interesting. They even threw $100 million in credits at security teams to get the go-ahead. So what they're doing here when they're issuing these credits is they issued $100 million in credits. So that these companies that are getting access to this model, they have $100 million worth of credits to go ahead and get started. Now, the government has beef. Even the feds are involved, and of course that tells you everything. And apparently there's a back and forth with the Trump administration over exactly how to use this. I don't know exactly the ins and outs of what they're discussing, but I do know that they're going back and forth, and there's maybe some disagreements there on how exactly this should play out. But I don't have much information on that as of yet. I do know the market reaction. So there was a bit of a shakeup. So obviously, when this news hit, investors in cybersecurity stocks, they dropped 5 to 11%. For good reason. I mean, everybody's thinking, like I said earlier, why would these cybersecurity companies even exist anymore? If a company can use this AI model to scan their hardware within their organization, why would they hire somebody to do it? If it's dummy proof now, I mean, you can just get this model, cut it loose, and it does its thing. Why would anybody need, a cybersecurity company to come into their organization to scan for vulnerabilities? Well, there's a bit of a twist. So with the Project Glasswing, these cybersecurity companies are intertwined with Project Glasswing, and they are integrating Mythos Preview into their organizations. So cybersecurity is still going to be alive and well. They're just going to be utilizing the model themselves. So for all the worry about, is this cybersecurity company going to go bankrupt, or they're going to be, off the stock market list, I wouldn't really worry about that. They're just going to utilize this themselves. Now, for it not being released to the public, to me, I understand, and I think it's probably the best thing at this point until they get a better hand on it. Maybe they could go through and, edit it or take out certain parts to release to the public. But in my personal opinion, the average Joe should not have access to this because there's just no reason for it. It should be strictly for, in my opinion, the U.S. government. I don't really see it being a good thing to release it to these corporations because, I mean, we don't know who within this corporation would have access to it and what their intent may be. So as far as on my side goes, my opinion is that the federal government should have access to it. Only the United States federal government should have access to it. It's something that I think that the United States government should really make sure that they're the only ones that gets their hand on this. You know, if Iran, which, you know, obviously who we're at war with now, if they were to get access to it, China, Russia, any of our, you know, common enemies get a hold of this, it could be devastating for the country. So where I stand with it is the United States government should have access to it, and they should use it to the benefit of the American people. Now, how that plays out, I don't know, but I'm not really with the idea that these corporations should have access to it, because you never know who's within these organizations, what they may be trying to do. I mean, you could have an executive in this corporation who has access to it, has a bad day at work, maybe he even gets fired, and he decides to take it out on the world. So I don't really know the ins and outs of how they're delegating access, or who they are delegating access to this model within these organizations. But I'm on the side of the United States government should have access to it. It would probably be a better world if it didn't exist at all, but it does exist, and it's not going anywhere. It's just like AI, just like any other AI model. AI is embedded into the world, and I did see, now don't quote me on this, but if I remember correctly, I heard someone say, in order to get rid of AI, to scrub it from, you know, the world, you would have to shut the internet down for 5 years. And that's just not plausible, guys. This world runs on the internet. There's no way that we could function as a society without the internet being live. I mean, imagine your world without internet. Most of you probably couldn't do your jobs. If you did, you could still do your job, but it just would not be efficient like it has been since we've had the internet. So shutting down the internet for 5 years to get rid of AI is just not plausible. So it is here, and it's here to stay, and so is Mythos. So with that being said, I can understand the worry that Anthropic has, for this model. With that being said, just to be real, talking about the future, Mythos isn't the peak. It's just the starting point. Other companies are going to piggyback off of this. They're going to try to compete. They're going to come up with their own cybersecurity model. You name it. It's capitalism 101. There's going to be competition. So this is definitely not the end. Something else that's interesting. AI went from finding simple bugs to now it's finding decade-old vulnerabilities in months. That curve is just insane. So AI is rapidly expanding, and it's here to stay. It's only going to get better. That's why earlier, I mentioned anybody that's listening, if you can try to, start learning how to use AI in any way, shape, or form, even if it's just for your daily life, writing your schedule or setting reminders for, to go and pay this bill or go to the grocery store or just outline your day, you name it. I would highly, highly, highly encourage you to try, just so you're somewhat familiar with how this works. Now, Anthropic did issue a warning, and I quote, "We're heading towards superhuman systems without proper safety." So Anthropic themselves as an organization they're scared of their own product here, guys. So that does tell you how serious this is, how big of a deal it is, and just how awesome this model is. I mean, it's truly remarkable. And obviously, because like this whole podcast is about, it's not released to the public, so I haven't been able to play with it, and only certain people in certain organizations are going to really know to the true extent what this thing is capable of. But for an organization to issue a warning about their own product is pretty telling, guys. This model really must be something serious, and to not take as a joke. I know a lot of people, if you talk to them about AI, they kind of maybe roll their eyes if they're not familiar with it. They're not interested in learning it. They maybe don't necessarily believe that it's going to do what I believe it's going to do, and it's going to be embedded in society in a huge way. Everybody will be using it eventually, and it won't be long. It could potentially, a lot of people are predicting in the next 2 years, it could, be integrated on a large scale by that point. And who knows if that's right? It could be 5 years. It could be 10 years. But in my lifetime, and most of you listening's lifetime, AI is going to be a big part of your world. And it's definitely here to stay. The era where humans controlled the pace of cybersecurity, that's over. So cybersecurity is going to have to adapt, just like every other organization is going to have to adapt. The organizations that do not adapt will not survive, because they're just going to be outcompeted by the organizations that do, because AI will make an organization run much more efficient than an organization who's not adopting it. So the question is, who's going to adopt it faster? Is it going to be the bad guys or the good guys, so to say, the defenders or the attackers? That's what that's what's such a big deal about this. The U.S. government is aware, and they're doing their best, and even Anthropic is helping. Now, when I say they're helping, from my understanding, there is a bit of a beef, like I said, with the government over how this is going to play out. But as I read that quote to you, Anthropic did issue a warning, and they're like, hey, we even realize our own product here is really dangerous. So they're taking it serious. So who adopts it faster is the big question, and they're with Project Glasswing. They are making strides to make sure that the right people get their hands on this and the wrong people don't. So to finish it up, this is one of the moments where the tech world really shifts. A model powerful enough to expose decades of mistakes. Think about that, guys. Imagine you're an elite level cybersecurity expert, and you've been doing this as your whole career, and you know everything there is to know, and you're the best, but not anymore, because AI can do what you've been doing your whole life 10 times better, and that's probably saying it lightly. So this is it's a big shift. AI isn't just a tool anymore. It's a force multiplier. It is going to multiply the efficiency in all organizations, and with this current model, with Mythos preview, it's going to really change the game here. This is, it's either going to be for good or it's going to be for chaos. And of course, we hope that the right people get their hands on this before the wrong people do. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to wrap it up with that. Look forward to many more episodes to come.